one of the strangest things about getting older. The older you get, the harder change becomes. Not necessarily because life gets worse, but because the life we know starts to feel much safer. I moved to Spain about 18 months ago, and recently I went back to visit my old hometown in the UK for the first time in quite a while. And honestly, I started to think quite a lot about this.
Because part of me feels deeply connected to it. The streets, the routines, the familiarity. When you have lived in a place for decades, it becomes part of who you are, part of your DNA. And walking around there again reminded me how easy it is for years to quietly pass by without much really changing in your life. You have the same roads, the same habits, and the same routines. And before you realise it, years quietly disappear. Now, don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with familiarity. In many ways, it's comforting, especially as you get older. But I do think there's a point in life where comfort can slowly start turning into limitation. And I think this is something a lot of people quietly struggle with later in life. Are they genuinely happy where they are? Or have they just simply become just too comfortable?
Now, this isn't about saying one country is better than another. That's not the point. There are still many things that I love about the UK.
I love the humour, the history, the pub, and of course fish and chips. I have some more of my trip back to the UK coming up shortly. And even though I have now made Spain my new home, going back still has the feeling of home.
But Spain did make me realise something very important, and that is, you don't realise how stuck you've become.
But once you step outside the life you've known for years, things do become clearer. And one thing I've definitely noticed since moving to Spain is that life feels slower in a nice way.
And I spend more time outside, I walk more, and I notice things more.
And honestly, I think I'd forgotten what that felt like for a while. And I think the older you get, the more emotionally difficult big changes become. And it's not because people stop dreaming about change.
You start thinking more about what could go wrong, what you might lose, and is the effort worth it? And then the routine, well, it starts to become just your identity.
While I've been out walking the dog today, I've been thinking about how differently people think about time as they get older. When you're younger, life just feels wide open. You assume there's always time to change things later on. But eventually, you start realizing something slightly uncomfortable. Healthy years are not unlimited.
And strangely, I don't think most people are frightened of one huge thing. I think they're frightened of an accumulation of many small things. The paperwork, the uncertainty, the language, the waiting, the thought of starting over again. All these little worries all accumulate and they add up.
People convince themselves it's safer to stay exactly where they are, even if deep down they know they're not completely fulfilled anymore, because certainty becomes addictive.
Especially later in life, I think people slowly stop asking themselves the question, what is it that I really want? And they start asking, what is the safest? And those are two very different questions. Now, going back to my UK trip, and you will see why I fully understand why some people choose to stay. There are some things here that feel very different straight away. The one thing that hits you, of course, is the weather straight away. It's damp and it's chilly. And then the other thing that strikes me straight away as I look around is just how quickly a place changes in just a year or so. There are so many places here that have changed, closed down, and it's really surprising.
Even something as ordinary as going to the supermarket felt strangely familiar. You just know where everything is. You understand the little routines without even thinking about it. And it's amazing how quickly those habits come back. It's comfortable, almost effortless. And I think that is one of the reasons change becomes so much harder as we get older. And of course, there are things you genuinely miss, such as the British pub. I had an apple crumble in Wetherspoons, something I have not been able to find anywhere in Spain. It's hardly life-changing, but it's funny how often it's the small things that can stay with you, not the big things, the little rituals, the familiar comforts, the things that quietly make somewhere feel like home. And one thing you don't really appreciate until you leave somewhere is the shared culture. I found myself in a packed pub watching Stockport County, and for a few moments I was right back in that familiar world again. The humour, the atmosphere, and the community. Things you don't necessarily think about when you live somewhere every day. The place erupted when they scored. Then in the evening, it was off to the pub for some live music. People enjoying themselves. Friends catching up. And it reminded me that every place has things worth appreciating. Sometimes we focus so much on what we want to escape from that we forget to recognise what's already good.
But when you do wake up to a beautiful sunny morning in England, it's always amazing. And there's nothing more British than this, English cricket. I do think once you've lived in two different places and you come back and you travel between the two, that you really do tend to notice the differences more and more. And you also tend to appreciate the good things in both places.
And of course, the biggest thing is not the weather, or the food, or the football. It's family. Time with children. Time with grandchildren. The ordinary moments you can't get back. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of any major life change. Because every choice gives you something. But every choice asks you to give something up also.
When you come back, you look at things with a different perspective. I've very much enjoyed my time back in the UK, and I'm heading back with some mixed emotions. I mean, the UK is where my roots are. It's where I was born, it's where I was brought up, and it's where I have lived most of my life. And I shall be back again, hopefully not too long. But Spain is now my home, and I'm looking forward to heading back home. I love my life in Spain. I'm looking forward to the warm weather and the sun, and also seeing my dog Susie. see me? Are you pleased to see me? Oh, Susie. Hey, I've come back. I told you I would come back. I told you I wouldn't leave you. I'd never leave you, would I? Hey, I'd never leave you. I'd never leave you.
Now, of course, moving somewhere like Spain is not some magical solution to life. Eventually, Spain stops feeling like a holiday and becomes normal life too. You've still got bills, appointments, loneliness sometimes, and routine again. You still bring yourself with you, your worries, your habits, and your personality. And I think some people struggle because they expect a new country to completely change how they feel inside. But life does not really work like that. What changes more than anything is perspective. Because sometimes changing your environment changes you in ways you don't expect. You start questioning what actually matters, how much stress you really need in your life, how quickly you want your days to pass. And I think for many people, that's the real attraction of places like Spain.
Because eventually, I think the real danger later in life is not about getting older.
It's slowly losing your curiosity, losing the willingness to experience something different, to risk discomfort, to start again, to surprise yourself. And I think that happens much more easily than many people realize.
Fear slowly grows stronger, and curiosity, well, it just slowly dies. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should suddenly move abroad. Of course not. Some people are genuinely very happy where they are. However, I do think that many people later in life ask themselves the question, is this really how I want to spend the years I've got left? And I do think that is a very honest question, because eventually you do realise that the healthy years that you have remaining are actually very precious indeed. And despite all the challenges, I do think changing your life later on can be incredibly rewarding. Not because everything suddenly becomes perfect, but because sometimes making a big change reminds you that life still has new experiences left in it. And I think that matters more than many people realise. Maybe that is why so many people dream about places like Spain in the first place. Not because of the sun, but because they are dreaming of a different way of life. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, I do have another video out that you may be interested in. It kind of sits alongside this one. It's titled, Are You Really Too Old to Move to Spain? Please feel free to check that one out. Anyway, that's it for this week, and I hope to see you again. So, as always, take care and bye for now.